Auschwitz is a name the world can't forget. At the Nancy and David Wolf Holocaust and Humanities Center, we've made it part of our mission to understand its impact by learning from those who survived and came to Cincinnati. In this limited series, we share those stories of courage, loss, and the ripple effects still felt today.
Hi, I'm Jackie Congedo, and welcome to a special edition of the Upstander Ripple Effect, where we are joined by the incredible Elizabeth Pierce, the president and CEO of the Cincinnati Museum Center, to talk a little bit about our collaboration between the Nancy and David Wolf Holocaust and Humanities Center and the Cincinnati Museum Center to bring the Auschwitz traveling exhibition called Auschwitz Not Long Ago, Not Far Away here to Union Terminal in the fall of this year. Yeah. An incredibly exciting opportunity for our community, and I think a timely one as well. This is the largest collection of artifacts and documents outside of Auschwitz to ever be presented in North America, and it has only made a few stops in North America. So we really will be hosting this incredible exhibition for basically the totality of the Midwest,
right?
Coming in the fall.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about, you were in these conversations before I was even a thing at HHC, before I had joined the team here. Bring me back to sort of when this first came across your desk and why this was a real priority for you and your team at the Museum Center.
So it was created in 2017, 2018. It was at the Kansas City Union Station Center in 2019. And we do a lot of benchmarking with that group there. They're also in a restored train station. They also have a large exhibition space. And I just knew that it was having a tremendous impact on that community. There were hundreds of thousands of people coming in the greater Kansas City, Midwest area there to see this exhibition. And so that's how it became on my radar screen. We, of course, were moving back into Union Terminal. Holocaust and Humanities Center was opening here at Union Terminal at that time. And then we have COVID, so everything got shut down. So I've paid attention to it as it's been in different places and talked to the curator and talked to partners who have had it, knowing that in the back of my mind, like, that's something that needs to come to Cincinnati, and it clearly needs to be in this building for all the connections that you and I are going to talk about today.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about that. One of the things I'm so excited about for this joint effort is, and really I say joint, it's you and I and our teams and the organizations, but also a number of other players, World Heritage Exhibitions, the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum, Musealia, which is the curator of this exhibition, and a number of other thought leaders and scholars who came together to put this incredible public learning experience together. What makes it so let's talk about how unique it is that it's going to be in this space. That is, as you said, a train station. And we know, obviously, in the work that we do at HHC, the significance of trains and the history. And if you've ever been to HHC, or if you haven't, come down before the Auschwitz exhibition. You can take a look and learn for yourself. But this concept of, trains, of course, during the history that brought people to death, but also in this building,
brought people to their new lives.
Yes. And this concept of rebuilding and local survivors and resilience and hope that I think anchors us in our work. So, we're going to get to tell this story in a place where the history, I always say the global history became local history. What is that, as you've been thinking about the power of that, what does that mean to you?
Well, we have this incredible moment and opportunity in this building to be able to bring these traveling exhibitions to bring the world to Cincinnati. We've done that consistently over the last 20 years. We brought the Vatican exhibition, we brought the Cleopatra exhibition, we brought the Dead Sea Scrolls exhibition. So Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, being able to be a part of that body of work made so much sense. And I was jumping up and down with the exhibit producers who were like, we might take it to Chicago, we might send it to a bigger city. I said, no, it has to come here.
Right.
It has to come here because of the history of the building, and it also has to come here because Nancy and David Wolf Holocaust and Humanities Center has put the emphasis on humanity and the call to action of what one does as one has been presented with this information. So to be able to have your unique approach to wrap around and channel the emotion that will be generated as people bear witness to this is unique in every presentation that it's been around the globe. So Cincinnati gets to do something that nobody else has been able to do.
Yeah, and I think you could tell, when the World Heritage team came, and they obviously know the Museum Center well, worked with you all in another number of other exhibitions, but came to see this space, to see the Holocaust and Humanity Center Museum. That was, I think, abundantly clear to them that, we have this approach that, yes, is anchored in the gravity of the history and the consequences of the history, but really, at its core, and this comes from our local survivors, right? It's not enough just to teach the history. We have to ask ourselves, what does that ask of us today?
Right.
And how can we actually use this as a foundation for inspiration? We know what the worst of humanity looks like. It's really actually not enough to say, let's not be the worst. Let's talk about what it looks like to be the good.
Exactly.
So, I'm excited to see what we can do in partnership, which our teams are feverishly planning right now, to make sure that we can sort of use this experience as sort of an alchemist to bring people in a way that is compelling and grounded in the truth and the historical facts of what happened.
Right.
And then to sort of catalyze this spirit of upstanding to come out of it. So we're doing that in a couple of ways. The first thing is talk a little bit about like what's going to be different in this presentation. So the first thing is we have the amazing fortune of sort of being the guardians of the local stories, people who came here with nothing and found the resilience in themselves to, build new lives, to contribute to this community, to build this incredible institution, this museum. And so some of those stories are sort of people who survived Auschwitz.
Right.
We're going to be able to actually integrate those local stories into the exhibition itself. So when you come through, if you've been to the one in Boston or, it's in Toronto right now, you should still come again because it will be a different experience.
And even if you've gone to DC and seen the National Museum, this is going to be a different experience than what you've seen there. There will be themes and threads that are similar, but to your point, we get to integrate some of the local stories into and be a part of this global exhibition.
Yeah. So we'll have those local stories intertwined, and then we're doing a lot of work on the sort of the before and the after aspects of this, the education and sort of resources that people will have access to before they come in and after they leave that are grounded in this call to be the best of humanity today. So, the character strengths, which help us understand our own capacity to be what we call upstanders. And how do we introduce people to that framework and give them some tools to do something with the feelings, as you said, these, I think, very consequential and heavy feelings that people are going to have when they leave this exhibition. Let's talk about just the core of the exhibition itself. What kinds of things can people expect to see when they come in? This is obviously billed as the largest collection of artifacts outside Auschwitz to ever be presented in North America. What kinds of things will people be able to experience and encounter?
Well, I think the physicality of the camp will be presented in a way through concrete pillars and barbed wire and a barrack that they've been able to rebuild and travel. So you'll get a sense of kind of what it was like to be there from that perspective. There are a number of art pieces that are going to help tell the story a little bit more, as well as artifacts from people who were at the camp. So you will see things that belong to people that were taken from them when they arrived. You will also see kind of stories of Auschwitz as a community prior to it being determined to be the death camp that it became. It was a thriving medieval community for 800 years before the Nazis showed up and decided to make it what we know it as now. And I think the reality that it sat on this transportation crossroad and this economic crossroad is why they chose it for this ultimate destiny. But I think understanding that Auschwitz was a place unto itself so you get a little sense of that and some material culture from the community prior to the Nazis arriving.
Yeah, and I actually think that is so important, particularly for the times we're living in, because the more we, again, can sort of conceptualize this or put this in a place in our own minds that's long ago and far away, to use the branding of the exhibition,
Yes.
the less we can hold that this was something that human beings built, human beings participated in, and
That it was happening right over there.
yeah, exactly. That this
So-
was a town with people who went home next door and tended their gardens and fed their families and then went back to work at the gas chambers,
Yes.
right? So we have to hold the weight and complexity of the fact that as people, we are capable of the best of humanity and the worst of humanity.
Right.
And I think Auschwitz has become this reminder of that for us collectively as a society, as a human family, that, what happened there, the worst, absolute worst of humanity happened there, perpetrated by everyday people.
Right.
And
Right.
also the resilience,
Great stories.
incredible stories of survival, of people who held hope amidst these incredibly horrific conditions and dehumanizing frameworks, rescue. So we have, and we have a lot of those stories in terms of local people who lived them. So we're really excited to bring that to folks in Cincinnati, but also more regionally.
Right.
How is this curated in a way that's accessible for people? Can you talk a little bit about like the experience of being in the exhibition? I think there's a lot of folks who might feel like, I'm not sure that I have it in me,
Yes.
given the weight of our world, to
Right.
go see this. What would you say to encourage folks that, this is something that is accessible, that's built to be consumed?
It's built across a number of learning styles. So there will be an audio guide. There will be panels where you can read and take your time and work your way through things. There are large scale objects like we talked about and small scale objects. And so it'll flow and there's video throughout, some news footage of the day, and then family video that shows like life before
yeah.
and what was lost. And so it's going to be a range of content in a way that people can kind of consume and dip in and out. It's not so linear and chronological that you have to walk through it very in a very specific
Sequentially,
way.
yeah.
But and I've seen it now twice, and I've kind of meandered through and picked up different things at each time, and so I think it will be accessible to a high school audience, a college audience, an adult audience, maybe junior high, as it kind of tracks a little bit with how you guys bring students in as well.
Yeah.
I didn't find it. It wasn't overly graphic and disturbing from that perspective.
Yeah.
It's more just disturbing that you're standing in this space that is resonant of. And so, then being able to intersperse that with the stories of the survivors that came from the videos that are there, and then to have our local stories added to it, I think will lift up that holding of hope and that energy that people use to spur their lives forward.
Yeah, I know that, in our survivor community, the folks we work with and, who have family history tied to Auschwitz are, excited is not the right word. I think grateful and see this as a real opportunity to infuse the story that really can be centered around dehumanization with this sense of humanity, and not just humanity, local humanity. So, when you come into this exhibition, folks like Steve Koppel, whose father, Werner, was really at the foundations of building the Holocaust and Humanity Center, what is now HHC, arrived in this building with a wife, a baby, and a suitcase. And he always would say that started the second part of my life, or that ended the first part of my life, reflecting on sort of that, these were two wildly, he was almost like he lived two different
experiences.
existences. And so, people will have the power before they see any of the artifacts or are sort of immersed in, these pieces that help them get a sense of what the camp was like. They will hear from Steve.
Right.
That this history
is my family history.
And it happened actually in this building, right? The rebirth, the new life, the new second chapter for my family happened.
The number
here.
of people that I've already talked to about this that say, "Oh my God, I've had chills." Like it, in their emotional core, they respond to it.
Yeah.
Just like I am right now.
And I think that is the power of it. That's the power of it being told here. That's the power of being able to lift up these voices of survivors and their children, because I think, we have a story that we should be proud to tell here, which is about resilience and rebuilding and hope and new life, and the way this community, is a city, embraced a group of people who were refugees.
Right. It's also interesting to put it in the broader context of the history of this community over 200 plus years of waves of immigration coming here, right? So it's interesting to me to have the depth of Jewish history in Cincinnati to also kind of be a part of that story, because we celebrated the bicentennial of Jewish Cincinnati several years ago. And so just to know that, like, this is a place that is rooted in culture, is rooted in this resilience of community building over many, many years. One of the stories about this building during the World War II is that it's the first USO, essentially, in the country that gets established here. And it's staffed in this very ecumenical way by women of Protestant, Jewish, and Catholic traditions coming here to help care for the soldiers as they are crisscrossing the country in and out of this train station. So the just this layer upon layer of Cincinnati that I think people are going to discover also.
Yeah.
And this exhibition is going to create conversations for people to have. And, as people say, "Oh, I knew that person. Oh, I knew that family. I didn't know that part of that family history."
Yeah.
But they've been a vibrant member of the community, is the example, is the resilience, is the thing that we want to be teaching the next generation, that we want to be reminding ourselves of right now as well. So, yeah.
It's
layered and rich.
Yeah. I think that's well said. And, the magic of museums is that the story still isn't written. Because the missing piece is the people who come and experience it, and what happens as a result of. We know this in Kansas City, and in other cities where this has been. Folks have shared that there was actually sort of a measurable seismic difference in the way community cohesion and this
an uptick in relationships and understanding and
because there really is nothing like being confronted with the consequences of lack of that.
Right.
Like unchecked hatred, division, dehumanizing forces. These can lead to truly catastrophic things. So when we're, when the consequences of that are laid bare and people can experience it in a way that's grounded in the history, that's grounded in the personal local narratives, and they have the space to sort of let it transform them and move them. And then we can tell them, okay, well, guys, what does it look like to actually be the best of? How do we do that? Let's take this and do something with it. I think that, the rest of the story really has yet to be written. I'm really excited to see what happens as a result of this learning in this city. And certainly, we're living in a moment, you referenced this a little bit, we have sort of rising forces of hatred, division, polarized politics. The temperature feels like it's just really hot and high right now. Anti-Semitism, of course, is a part of that mix. I guess I would just ask you, if we're successful, what does it look like?
Right, that's
after this leaves?
That is a great question that I think we are still maybe going to explore that because we've been so focused on the logistics and the details,
the lighting and the
getting it all
clearances
organized and all of that. But I do think, like what we've heard from other communities, as you said, are stronger relationships that come out of it, a greater awareness of people throughout. I think Cincinnati does that pretty well, but there's always, that is a fire that needs to be fed on a regular basis. We need to keep encouraging that relationship building, that understanding, that breadth of humanity that we want to see. I also think maybe as we see, I'd be curious to hear how teachers are going to embrace this exhibition and then how that will spur their conversations in their classrooms forward. Because I think the fundamental thing that we are struggling with right now is a lack of productive dialogue. And this exhibition gives us another moment in time to say, let's talk about the power of connection and the power of dialogue and see where that takes us.
We're doing a lot of work right now to get ready for the, teachers and students and what sort of craft that experience holistically, because certainly there will be the time they spend in the exhibition. We want to build a really comprehensive experience for teachers and students that will, equip them with what they need to know about, the human story, as you said, who Jews are, what is anti-Semitism. That helps them understand the gravity of the history through the exhibition. That helps them learn a little bit more about the local stories, through additional time in our space or with our speakers. And then on the back end, that helps them connect to the character strengths and gives their students an actionable tool to say, great, let's talk about what this means for us today and how we can activate that. So it'll be interesting to see, but we already have a lot of interest from, teachers and school districts saying, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be able to bring my kids to see this. I get the feeling from teachers and schools that this is similar to being able to, it's the same kind of excitement they would have if they could take their kids to D.C. To see, the museum in Washington. So it's just an incredible gift to the community, I think. Your leadership that has brought this here.
Well,
and the partnership
good
that
partners make it happen.
I am really hopeful that it lives up to all of our expectations and more, and that, like I said, the magic of when the community can experience this and what happens as a result of that, it's going to be really exciting. Is there anything else that you would want to add? Or I would also ask, you've seen this exhibition a number of different times in other cities. Are there moments that still stick with you from seeing in the exhibition itself that have
well, we talked a little bit about the fact that I had no walking in. I hadn't even thought about Auschwitz as a community prior to its role at the camp. So, so that was one thing that really kind of did take my breath away a little bit. Oh, wait, Auschwitz was this thriving place, and so just the realization that it something can so quickly be turned into something else. So that very much stayed with me. I think the survivor testimonies that show up in the exhibition are things that you can see here in your gallery. And so that was another resonant connection as well. And understanding just how to take some time and not rush through the exhibition. Right. So museum people are the worst museum exhibit attendees. We walk through very quickly, check. Yeah. So just, the notion of take a deep breath and soak in the information. And I think one of the tickets that we're going to offer is the ability to kind of come and go and, go through it and come back again and go through it another time. So the ability to take your time through and be able to process. But, I guess the other thing I would say is we have a lot of pre-time. So people should be curious about it. They should come here to your space and see this presentation and understand the local dynamic before the exhibition comes. And hopefully they will also do some additional research or read up on a number of things that will give them additional context around it.
I think there's a lot of opportunity for folks to sort of spend some time preparing.
Yes.
And to your point, the dwell time in the exhibition as compared to other exhibitions has been pretty long, right? So people
want to take their time with the information.
Right, exactly. So, being able to come and experience some of the stories beforehand to anchor yourself in sort of the core tenets of the history and the local layer of this beforehand, I think will be really helpful for people.
There's also the Auschwitz State-Birkenau Museum has a podcast called On Auschwitz, and the curator from Poland leads that podcast. He's been a central part of the presentation as well. So that's another resource in addition to the material that you're putting out. So there are a variety of ways to kind of really get yourself grounded in and have a sense of what you're going to see, and then still be moved by seeing the objects and hearing the information.
Yeah, and it's going to be, this is a big operation for even, the incredible, I would say, the wizards on your team at the Museum Center. You guys are going to be moving to 7 days a week time ticketing. Right. I mean, this is going to be a lot of people. In other cities, we've seen up to 300,000 people, right?
Well, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to engage local and regional communities to come. So the way to bring all these other places, they often come for other exhibitions. This is going to be similar in that regard. Yeah. And I think it's a great opportunity for the broader region, because we know that there are survivor stories in Cleveland, in Columbus, in Louisville, in Indianapolis, right? This is a place where they can come, visitors from those communities can organize themselves and
it's our collective history.
Exactly. And be able to really kind of pull in a number of different regional areas.
Yeah. So tickets are on sale.
Yes.
And we would recommend that folks get their tickets in advance. You'll also see when you go to purchase a ticket, there's a special add-on for HHC, which gives sort of additional context for the local history and also the connection for our world today and this humanity layer and Upstander. And so you get a little discount if you get your Auschwitz ticket and you bundle it with the HHC ticket. Right. So go online to the Museum Center's website, get your tickets. Sign up for a time because it's going to be packed,
right? And
we're just really excited to bring this to the community, and so grateful for the partnership of our friends at the Museum Center for your leadership, really, in being the driving force to bring this here. It's speaking personally, and I know for our team, we feel like this is the kind of the opportunity of a lifetime to be able to share these stories on a really grand scale and do it at a time when we all feel the weight of the world.
It just makes perfect sense to be able to bring this here to Cincinnati, but specifically to this building.
Yeah, I think so. And as I said, the magic component is you. So we can't wait to see what your takeaway is when you come see this and how this changes us as a city and as a region for the better. Thank you so much for spending time with me today, and onward.
Here we go.
This is a production of the Nancy and David Wolf Holocaust and Humanities Center. The center's mission is to ensure that the lessons of the Holocaust inspire action today. This series is part of the Cynthia and Harold Gutman Family Center for Storytelling. Special thanks to Julie and John Cohen for their support of this series. Visit us in person at Historic Union Terminal in Cincinnati, Ohio, or online anytime at holocaustandhumanity.org. Managing producer is Ann Thompson, technical producer is Robert Mills, and technical director is Josh Emerson. Additional video production by Michael Holder. Visit Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, at Union Terminal, beginning in October 2025.